A Werewolf Shifter romance audiobook written by Katherine Stewart. Prologue. The storm broke over the Blackwater peaks with the fury of a grieving god. Rain lashed against the thick glass of the Alpha's study, each drop a phantom claw scrabbling to get in. Inside, the only sounds were the spit and crackle of a dying fire, and the ragged draw of Kael's own breath. He stood before the great oak desk, a monolith of his father's legacy, and stared at the words that had become the bars of his cage. The seer's scroll, brittle with age and heavy with doom, lay unfurled beneath his hands. The words were a brand on his soul. 1. Only a union of Blackwater and Sunstone blood will secure the pack's future line. His mind, the Alpha's mind, clung to it. A drowning man to driftwood, tangible, political. A pact of strength he could forge with his own 2 hands. The Sunstone Alpha had a warrior daughter. New blood, fortified borders. It was a cold, logical path, a ruler's path. His gaze drifted, unwilling, to the second part. 2. The curse will only be broken by the power of a fated mate, born from the lost ashes of the moon. A bitter, soundless laugh escaped him. A fated mate? A fairy tale, a myth from a time before the plague, a time before the silence, the crushing silence of empty birthing rooms, season after season, the silence of grieving mothers. He closed his eyes. Useless. The images were seared there, haunted faces, the whisper of his father's failure. This curse wasn't just a plague of sterility. It was a blight on their very spirit, a slow rot, eating them from the inside out. And the prophecy gave him a cruel choice. A political savior, or a mythical one, a treaty, or a ghost. He could not have both. The weight of his title, this crown of failure, felt heavier than the mountain itself. It demanded a choice, a sacrifice. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Growl. The voice of his wolf, the part of him he kept chained. It saw the prophecy not as a choice, but as a path. It yearned for the mate, the soul-deep connection that was an Alpha's true north. It knew, to lead without a mate is to lead with half a soul. Kael silenced it, brutal, efficient. Instinct was a luxury, hope was a fool's game. He was the Alpha of a dying people, and his duty was not to his own soul, but to their survival. His fist slammed down on the desk, a gavel in the court of his own despair. The great hunt was in a week. Sunstone would be there. He would make the alliance, secure the bloodline. He would cut out the heart of the matter, and his own with it, to save them all. He turned from the desk, a king on a frozen throne. The storm raged on. The war raged within. He had chosen his path. He would pay any price. He just prayed, and he could survive it. Chapter 1. The atmosphere in the birthing den was cold. So cold, it felt sharp in his lungs. Kael stood like a statue carved from mountain stone, his eyes fixed on the small, still form wrapped in soft furs. Another one. The third this season. Around him, the she-wolves of his pack let out soft, keening cries. A sound of grief that had become as common as the wind in the pines. His wolf paced inside him, a caged beast rattling its bars with a grief of its own. But then, Kael shoved it down. He was the Alpha, and his pack needed stone, not sorrow. Moments later, his beta, Marcus, touched his arm. The touch was light, careful, as if he were afraid Kael might shatter. "Alpha," Marcus murmured, his voice rough. "You should go. Let the mothers have their time." Kael didn't move. He couldn't, because if he moved, if he showed one crack in his control, the whole pack might fall apart. He had to be strong because they were so broken. "No." His voice was flat. "Final. I stay." Truth be told, he felt like a fraud. Their leader, their protector. Yet he couldn't protect them from this creeping silence. This curse. His father couldn't stop it either, a bitter poison in his gut. His father, a great alpha, had watched the plague begin. And now? Now, Kael was watching it end them. More importantly, he refused to let his father's failure become his legacy. He finally turned, his gaze sweeping over the grieving she-wolves. Their eyes hollow. To make things worse, he saw the question in them. The same question that haunted his own dreams. How much longer? How much longer until the Blackwater pack was nothing but a memory? A story told by other packs about the great line that just ended. Without another word, he pushed past Marcus and strode out of the den. The cool night air was a relief against his feverish skin. He needed to be alone. He needed the one thing that gave him any hope at all, even if it was a hope that felt more like a curse. The seer's prophecy. That night, he knew he wouldn't find any rest. Not until he looked upon those damning words again. Chapter 2. Kael stood in his study. The room felt heavy, weighed down by the ghosts of past alphas, by the silent judgment of his father's portrait over the hearth. Then he looked at the scroll on his desk. The prophecy. 2 paths, 2 impossible choices. His finger traced the first line. 1. Only a union of Blackwater and Sunstone blood will secure the pack's future line. His mind, the alpha's mind, clung to it. A drowning man to driftwood, tangible, political. A pact of strength he could forge with his own 2 hands. The Sunstone alpha had a warrior daughter. New blood, fortified borders. It was a cold, logical path, a ruler's path. His gaze drifted, unwilling, to the second part. 2. The curse will only be broken by the power of a fated mate, born from the lost ashes of the moon. A bitter, soundless laugh escaped him. A fated mate? A fairy tale? A myth from a time before the plague? A time before the silence? The crushing silence of empty birthing rooms season after season. The silence of grieving mothers. He closed his eyes. Useless. The images were seared there. Haunted faces. The whisper of his father's failure. This curse wasn't just a plague of sterility. It was a blight on their very spirit. A slow rot, eating them from the inside out. And the prophecy gave him a cruel choice. A political savior, or a mythical one. A treaty, or a ghost. He could not have both. The weight of his title, this crown of failure, felt heavier than the mountain itself. It demanded a choice, a sacrifice. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Grrrl, the voice of his wolf, the part of him he kept chained. It saw the prophecy not as a choice, but as a path. It yearned for the mate, the soul-deep connection that was an alpha's true north. It knew, to lead without a mate is to lead with half a soul. Kael silenced it. Brutal, efficient. Instinct was a luxury. Hope was a fool's game. He was the alpha of a dying people, and his duty was not to his own soul, but to their survival. His fist slammed down on the desk, a gavel in the court of his own despair. The great hunt was in a week. Sunstone would be there. He would make the alliance, secure the bloodline. He would cut out the heart of the matter, and his own with it, to save them all. He turned from the desk. A king on a frozen throne. The storm raged on. The war raged within. He had chosen his path. He would pay any price. He just prayed. He could survive it. Chapter 3. Celine's wooden training staff sang through the air. Crack, thwack, crack. It moved like an extension of her own arm, a blur of motion as she parried another blow from her uncle, Elias. He was a big man, a warrior from her mother's old pack, but she was faster, lighter on her feet. Good. Elias grunted, sweat beading on his brow. You fight with your heart, Selene, not just your arms. She gave him a sharp grin. You taught me that. Truth be told, her uncle was the only one who really saw her. To the rest of the Silver Moon pack, she was just Celine, the outsider, the last daughter of the forgotten Ash Moon pack. They had been absorbed by Silver Moon years ago, after a rogue attack wiped out everyone else. Her parents, her family, everyone but her and Elias. Because of that, she had never truly fit in. She was a relic, a reminder of a past they'd rather forget. What's worse, her own alpha, Tristan, looked at her with pity. He saw a girl with a tragic past, not a warrior with a fierce spirit. He didn't know she spent her nights training, that her body was strong, that her wolf, a sleek, silver thing, was just as wild and ready for a fight as any of his prized warriors. Her wolf pressed forward inside her, hungry for a chance to prove itself. Soon after, their spar ended. Elias leaned against a tree, breathing heavily. "The great hunt is coming," he said, his voice low. "Tristan is choosing the hunters tomorrow." Celine's heart skipped. The great hunt. A gathering of all the major packs. A chance for glory. A chance for something more. Maybe it was fate. She had this one, desperate hope. The one thing that kept her going. The fated mate bond. A connection so deep it promised true belonging. Maybe, just maybe, he would be there. "He won't pick me." Her voice was small. "He thinks I'm fragile." "You are anything but fragile," Elias countered, his eyes serious. "You are Ash Moon, little wolf. There is a fire in you they don't understand. A fire they fear." She didn't know what scared her more, that he was right or that he was wrong. Deep down she knew the truth. She couldn't spend her whole life waiting to be seen. She had to make them see her. That night, she made a decision. She wouldn't wait for Alpha Tristan's pity. She would enter the hunt. She would show them all the fire of the Ash Moon. And she let it happen, the hope blooming in her chest like a wild, dangerous flower. Chapter 4. The great hunt was chaos. A beautiful wild chaos of pounding paws, snapping branches, and the scent of pine and damp earth mixing with the metallic tang of excitement. Celine ran with them, her silver wolf a flash of light against the deep green of the forest. Still, even in wolf form, she felt like an outsider. The other hunters ran in pairs or trios, their movements a synchronized dance. She ran alone. Because of that, she pushed herself harder, faster, determined to prove she belonged. She would not be the weak, pitied orphan today. Today? Today, she was a predator. She didn't know what scared her more. The hope blooming in her chest, or the fear of it being crushed. Maybe this time, maybe she would find the one person who saw her, really saw her. Without warning, the world turned into a nightmare of teeth and claws. A rogue, huge, scarred, stinking of rot. It slammed into her from the side. Pain exploded in her shoulder. Her body moved on instinct, twisting and snapping, but the rogue was heavier, stronger. Its hot breath was on her neck, its yellow eyes burning with mindless hate. As the silence stretched, she felt her strength failing. Her wolf whimpered inside her. This is it. But then, a blur of black fury erupted from the trees. It was a wolf bigger than any she had ever seen. A massive black beast that moved with the lethal grace of a living shadow. Between one breath and the next, the rogue was on the ground, its lifeblood staining the forest floor. The black wolf stood over it, heaving, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Immediately, it turned to her. Her breath caught. As if pulled by a string, her body began the shift, a dizzying, intense rush of heat and power. When it was over, she was on her knees, gasping. The black wolf was shifting too, his massive form resolving into that of a man, a powerful alpha. He straightened up, his bare chest slick with rain and something else. Under the weight of his stare, she looked up. The moment their eyes locked, the world ignited. Her heart skipped. The environment thickened, charged with a power she had only ever dreamed of. It was a tidal wave of scent, pine and moonflowers, a dizzying flood of emotion that wasn't hers, and a soul-deep recognition that screamed one impossible word. Mine. Chapter 5. The hunt was a means to an end. Kael moved through the forest with a purpose that had nothing to do with chasing prey. His target was political. The Sunstone Alpha, his daughter, Lyra. He tracked their scent, his mind churning with treaty terms and alliances. His pack's survival depended on this. He would not fail. He could not. Suddenly, a cry of pain cut through the woods. A feminine cry, full of terror. Before he could move, before he could think, his wolf surged forward, a raw, primal instinct he hadn't let loose in years. All thoughts of treaties and politics vanished. All that mattered was the she-wolf in distress. What followed was a red haze of fury. He saw the filthy rogue over a smaller silver wolf, and something inside him snapped. He didn't just defeat the rogue, he obliterated it. As the rage faded, he turned, his body already beginning the shift back to his human form. Then, he saw her. The moment their eyes locked, everything he thought he knew turned to dust. The seer's prophecy slammed into him not as words on a scroll, but as a living, breathing force. It was her. Her scent, moonflowers and something wild and free, was the scent he'd been dreaming of without knowing it. Her soul called to his, a perfect note in a silent world. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, he felt it too. The fated mate bond, real, overwhelming. His wolf howled in triumph. Mine! Without thinking, his hand went to the small pouch on his belt. His fingers closed around the smooth, cool moonstone, a traditional Blackwater courting gift, a gift he never thought he'd give. His body moved on instinct, stepping toward her, his hand outstretched. He had to touch her, to claim her, to make sure she was real. But then, another scent hit everywhere. Sunstone. As if summoned, the Sunstone Alpha and his daughter Lyra broke through the trees. They stopped, their eyes wide, taking in the scene. The dead rogue, the two naked, panting alphas. The tension broke. Kael froze. His human mind wrestled back control from his euphoric wolf. Selene, Sunstone, his soul, his duty. In the span of a breath, his dream became his nightmare. Chapter 6. He saw it all in a flash. The pleading hope in her eyes, and the calculating stare of the Sunstone Alpha, his dying pack, the sterile birthing dens, the prophecy that gave him a choice, a treaty or a ghost. And in that moment, he made a decision that felt like driving a blade into his own heart. He had to be the Alpha, he had to be the savior, even if it meant being the monster. He pulled his hand back, the moonstone suddenly feeling like a shard of ice. He built a wall of ice around his soul, his face becoming a mask of cold, cruel indifference. He turned his back on her, on his mate. Before the gathered alphas, under the watchful eyes of the entire world, he faced Selene. His voice, when it came out, was a thing of frost and iron. I, Alpha Kael of the Blackwater Pack, reject you as my mate. The words hung in environment, a poison that killed the very sound of the forest. To make things worse, he didn't let the silence linger. He immediately turned to the Sunstone Alpha, sealing his own damnation. Alpha Valerius, he said, his voice ringing with false authority. To secure the future of our packs, I formally request your daughter Lyra's hand, for my brother, Lucian.
The world went silent. His words weren't just sound, they were a physical blow. Her world tilted, then shattered into a million pieces. The connection that had blazed to life between them, the beautiful, brilliant fire, was snuffed out. Soon, the cold came. A chilling, unnatural cold seeped into her bones. Her breath caught in her throat, a choked sob. The space between them burned with the agony of a bond being violently severed. It was a phantom pain, a tearing in her soul so profound she almost collapsed. Her wolf, which had been pressing forward with so much joy, whimpered and retreated. It curled into a wounded ball in the furthest corner of her mind. Broken. She was vaguely aware of Kael turning away, of him speaking to the Sunstone Alpha. But his voice was a distant buzz. All she could feel was the echoing void in her chest where that beautiful connection had been. He had rejected her. He had rejected them. And just like that, everything changed. Hope turned to ash. Joy turned to agony. She was left standing alone, a ghost in the forest once more, with nothing but the cold weight of a meaningless stone in her hand.
Chapter 7. The celebration feast was a roaring lie. Flames leaped high, casting shadows that looked like grinning demons on the walls. Laughter, loud toasts. The sounds echoed around Kael, but they were dull, distant, like he was hearing them from underwater. He held a goblet of wine, the ruby liquid untouched. He could taste nothing but ash. Because of that, he felt 1,000,000 miles away. He was sitting beside his brother, Lucian, and the Sunstone she-wolf, Lyra, the perfect political couple, the future of his pack. He should have felt relief, triumph even. Instead, a phantom void had opened in his chest, a cold, aching hollowness that 1,000 roaring fires could not warm. Without warning, the ache sharpened, a stab of pure agony. Mine. The word was a silent scream from his wolf, a desperate dying cry. Kael gasped, his hand flying to his chest. The goblet slipped from his fingers, clattering to the stone floor. Wine spilled like blood. Kael. Lucian's voice was sharp with concern. What is it? But then, the feeling was gone, replaced by that same terrible emptiness. In that moment, he knew. Something had broken. Something had been severed completely. She was gone. Later, Marcus found him staring into the fire, away from the fake celebration. Alpha, he began, his voice low. I have word from the Silver Moon Pack. Kael didn't turn. What is it? It's the girl, Celine. The name hung in atmosphere, a ghost. She's gone, fled her pack in the night. No one knows where she went. A growl rose in Kael's throat, low and full of a pain he refused to name. He had made his choice. He had saved his pack. So why? Why did it feel like he had just damned his own soul? He didn't know what scared him more. The emptiness in his chest, or the chilling whisper that told him this was only the beginning of his punishment. Chapter 8. The world was gray, the vibrant greens of the forest, the rich brown of the earth. All of it had faded into dull, lifeless shades. Even the scents were gone. The pine, the damp soil, the animals. Nothing. The rejection had stolen the world's color, its sound, its very life, which meant her own life felt like it was slipping away too. The bond shock was a physical sickness, a fever that burned one moment, and a chilling cold that rattled her bones the next. Her wolf, her strong, proud silver wolf, was silent. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shift. Trapped, in this weak, human form, alone, hunted. She stumbled through the unclaimed lands, a harsh wilderness where only the strong or the lucky survived. Right now, she felt like neither. Truth be told, she didn't know how much longer she could go on. That night, she found a shallow cave behind a waterfall, the roar of the water a welcome noise in her silent world. She huddled in the back, clutching the one thing she had left of him. The moonstone. It was cold in her hand. A hard, meaningless rock. A reminder of a promise that had lasted only a single heartbeat. A tear slipped down her cheek, hot against her cold skin. But then, a low snarl echoed from the mouth of the cave. Her head snapped up. Yellow eyes, gleaming in the darkness. A lean, hungry mountain cat. It crept forward, its body low to the ground. A predator that smelled weakness. Her weakness. Fear. Sharp. Cold. It shot through her. Her heart skipped. Before she could move, her uncle's voice echoed in her memory. "Fight with your heart, Celine, not just your arms." As if pulled by a string, her hand went to the small hunting knife at her belt. Not much, but something. The cat sprang, and she let it happen, her body moving on instinct, rolling to the side as she brought the knife up in a desperate, clumsy arc. Chapter 9. Months crawled by, each one colder than the last. The union between Lucian and Lyra was respectful, quiet, and completely, utterly fruitless. The curse held. No new pups were born. The hope Kael had bought with his soul was turning to dust. The hollowness inside him grew, festering into a raw, irritable anger. His temper, once ironclad, now had cracks. He snapped at his counsel. He stalked the halls of his keep like a caged animal. The whispers in the corners of his pack grew louder. A weak alpha. An alpha without a mate. An alpha leading them to ruin. But then, to make things worse, the dreams started. Every night, the same dream. A fierce, silver-haired she-wolf. She didn't look broken or weak. No. She stood in a storm of her own making, her eyes burning with a power that wasn't just wolf. A power that called to the very earth beneath her feet. And the scent, that impossible scent of moonflowers, would cling to him when he woke, driving him to the edge of madness. He didn't know who she was. Or, deep down, he knew the truth, and he was terrified to admit it. She was no longer running. She was surviving. The pain of the bond was still there, a constant dull ache in her chest. But she had learned to live with it, to use it. It was the stone against which she sharpened her will. The unclaimed lands had tried to break her. Instead, she had learned its secrets. One afternoon, while tracking a deer, she leaned her hand against an ancient oak tree to steady herself. As her palm pressed against the rough bark, something inside her shifted. A jolt, not of pain, but of power. A warm, humming energy flowed from the tree, up her arm, and into the very core of her being. Her breath caught. Her wolf, silent for so long, stirred within her. More. It urged. As if fate demanded it, her fingers closed around the moonstone in her pouch. She pulled it out. It was no longer a cold, dead rock. A soft silver light pulsed from its center, warm against her skin. With every heartbeat, it grew brighter. She felt it clear as day. A connection. Not to a man who had rejected her, but to the world itself. To the earth beneath her feet, to the wind in the trees. The fire her uncle had spoken of. It was real. And it was hers. Chapter 10. The War Council felt more like a trial, and Kael was the one being judged. The alphas of Sunstone and Silvermoon sat around the great table, their faces grim. Maps marked with far too much of their enemy's color were spread out before them. "They move like a single disciplined force, Kael," Alpha Valerius of Sunstone said, his voice a low rumble of impatience. "These are not scattered rogues. This is an army. Your strategy of defensive patrols is failing." Kael's jaw tightened. "My warriors are the best. Your warriors are tired." Alpha Tristan of Silvermoon cut in, his tone sharp. "And so are mine. We are losing territory. We are losing hope. We need a new plan. We need real leadership." The unspoken words hung in the smoky air. The leadership you can't seem to provide. A hot, familiar rage coiled in Kael's gut. Before the rejection, no one would have dared question him like this. His alpha aura would have silenced them. But now, that power felt like a threadbare cloak. The hollowness in his chest, the constant phantom ache of his missing mate, had weakened him. It had weakened his command. They could all feel it. He opened his mouth to snarl a reply, to put them back in their place. But then, the heavy doors to the war room creaked open. A gust of wind swept through the room, making the torches flicker wildly. A lone figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. All arguments died. Every head turned. As the figure stepped into the light, Kael's breath caught in his throat. Deep down, he knew the truth before his eyes could even confirm it. That scent. Moonflowers. He felt it, clear as day, a jolt, as if lightning had just struck the mountain, and his world tilted on its axis. Chapter 11. It was her, but it wasn't her. The woman who stood before them was not the hopeful girl he'd shattered in the forest. No, this woman was formidable. Her silver hair was braided back from a face that was sharper now, carved by hardship and honed by a strength he didn't recognize. She wore simple leathers, practical and worn, but she carried herself with the quiet, still power of a winter storm. She wasn't breathtakingly beautiful in the way a pampered she-wolf was. She was breathtaking in the way a perfectly forged blade was. And around her neck, on a simple leather cord, was the moonstone. It pulsed with a soft, silver light, a silent heartbeat against her skin. The sight of it, of her, hit Kael like a physical blow. The dead, hollow space in his chest exploded into an agonizing symphony of feeling. The broken bond, it screamed to life between them, white-hot rage, soul-deep longing, and a regret so profound, it threatened to bring him to his knees. His wolf, dormant and grieving for months, went absolutely insane. Mate, mate. The ghost from his dreams was real. As the silence stretched, her gaze swept the room, calm and assessing. She looked at Valerius, at Tristan. Then, her eyes landed on him. For a split second, something flickered in their depths, a flash of the old pain. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cool, unreadable mask. Before either could speak, she addressed the council, her voice as clear and steady as a mountain stream. "You're fighting the wrong enemy," she said. "You think you're fighting rogues. You're not." Every alpha leaned forward. "The one leading them calls himself Malachor," she continued, "and he isn't just trying to take your territory. He created the plague." Just like that, everything changed. Chapter 12. The Unwilling Alliance. That's what he called it in his own mind. Celine's intel on Malachor was too valuable to ignore, so now he was forced to ride alongside her on a scouting mission, deep into the contested woods. The silence between them was a roaring torment. He wanted to scream, to apologize, to fall on his knees and beg. Instead, he said nothing. He had lost that right. With his scent in around, he could only imagine the hell this was for her. For him, it was a special kind of torture. Her nearness was a constant agonizing reminder of what he had thrown away. Then, they were ambushed. Malachor's wolves, fast, vicious. As if pulled by a string, Kael moved to put himself in front of her. A massive gray wolf lunged, but Celine was already moving. Her body moved on instinct, spinning to cover his flank, her movements a seamless, deadly dance that perfectly mirrored his own. They fought back to back, a flawless fighting unit that moved as one soul in two bodies. The discovery was a new, breathtaking agony. How could they be so perfect together, when he had broken them so completely?
Her chest ached with every breath she took near him. He smelled of pine and power, and the worst day of her life. She hated him for it. She hated that her wolf, the traitor, still recognized him. That it still felt the phantom pull of the bond he had severed. She told herself she was here for the pack, for the innocent lives at stake. Not for him. Never for him. But then, the world exploded into teeth and claws. While her pulse raced, she saw the wolf lunging for Kael's exposed side. A growl rose in her throat. Without thinking, she moved. Her instincts surged, and she met the attacker with a snarl of her own, fighting beside Kael as if they had been partners for a lifetime. Why? Why did her body betray her like this? Why did her soul still answer his, even after he had cast it aside? The confusion was a sharp, bitter pill. As the last attacker fell, they were left standing in the quiet that followed, the space between them burning with everything left unsaid.
Chapter 13. The adrenaline from the fight faded, fast. What followed was a sharp, biting pain in his side. Kael looked down. 3 deep claw marks, carved into his ribs and welling up with dark, sluggish blood. He hadn't even felt it happen. He must have been injured while shielding her. The thought barely had time to form before a wave of dizziness washed over him. He stumbled against a tree, his breath hissing through his teeth. "Kael!" Her voice was sharp, full of an alarm that felt like a hot poker to his soul. Before he could move, before he could tell her he was fine, she was there, close, too close. Environment thickened with her scent of moonflowers, and his head swam for a different reason entirely. "Don't move," she commanded, her voice soft but firm. He expected her to call for a healer, or maybe press herbs into the wound. Instead, she knelt before him. Her hands hovered over the gash, her palms facing his torn flesh but not touching. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved in a silent whisper. Right there, something impossible happened. A faint green light. It bloomed between her hands. He felt a strange, humming warmth spread through him, chasing away the cold ache of the injury. It felt alive, like the earth itself. He watched, stunned into silence, as tiny green tendrils, like the roots of a new plant, seemed to stitch his skin back together from the inside out. The pain vanished. The bleeding stopped. Within moments, the wound was gone, leaving only smooth, unbroken skin behind. The intimacy of the moment was staggering. Her power, flowing into him, healing him. It was a connection deeper than any touch, more profound than any words. As she pulled her hands away, her eyes fluttered open, looking tired but fierce. He stared at her, not as the girl he rejected, not as an ally, but as something else entirely, something ancient and powerful and beautiful. In the quiet that followed, his thoughts spun. What was she? Chapter 14. They returned to the makeshift camp just as the sky darkened. Lucian and his mate Lyra rushed to meet them, their faces etched with worry. "We heard fighting," Lucian said, his eyes scanning Kael for injuries. "Are you all right?" "We're fine," Kael answered, his voice rough. But his eyes were locked on Celine. He couldn't look away. Lyra, the Sunstone she-wolf, was not like the others. Her gaze was intelligent, observant, free from the weight of Blackwater politics. She noticed the way Kael looked at Celine. More importantly, she noticed the soft silver light pulsing from the moonstone around Celine's neck. "That's a beautiful stone," Lyra said, her voice gentle. "My grandmother used to tell stories about your people, the Ash Moon Pack." Celine tensed, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Lyra continued, completely innocent. She said they were special, that they were so connected to the wild magic, it was like they were born from the lost ashes of the moon. Born from the lost ashes of the moon. The words from the prophecy, her words. Air left Kael's lungs in a rush. His world didn't just tilt, it shattered. He stared at Celine, the last of the Ash Moon. The girl he thought was an obstacle. The girl he thought was a distraction from the cure. Between one breath and the next, the two halves of the prophecy slammed together in his mind. A union of blood will secure the line, and the curse will be broken by the power of a fated mate. Born from the lost ashes of the moon. They were never a choice. They were a sequence. They were one and the same. She was never the obstacle. She was the cure. And he had thrown her away. The weight of his own catastrophic foolishness crashed down on him, and for the first time in his life, Alpha Kael felt like he was truly, utterly, about to break. Chapter 15. Guilt was a physical thing. It clawed at his throat, making it hard to breathe. He had been so arrogant, so blind. He had nearly doomed them all, because he was too proud to believe in fate. He was so lost in his own failure he almost didn't hear the commotion. "Alpha!" a warrior shouted, dragging a captured rogue from the ambush into the center of camp. The rogue was bloody but defiant, spitting curses on the ground. With every heartbeat, Kael's anguish curdled into a cold, terrifying fury. He stalked toward the rogue, his alpha power now fueled by rage and regret, rolling off him in suffocating waves. "Who is Malachor?" he snarled, his voice a low growl. "And what does he want with her?" The rogue laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "He doesn't want to kill her, you fool," he spat. "He needs her. Her ashmoon blood is the key. With it, he can make the plague permanent, absolute. He will rule over a world of dust and silence." The threat was no longer about a dying pack. It wasn't about his legacy. It was about Celine, her life, her soul. Malachor wanted to corrupt her power, to use her very essence as a weapon of mass extinction. In that moment, something inside him shifted. His path forward was no longer clouded by prophecies or politics. It was crystal clear. It was her. He would protect her. He would burn the world to the ground to keep her safe. It was the only thing left that mattered.
She watched from the edge of the firelight. She heard the rogue's words, and a cold dread, colder than any bond shock, washed over her. "He needs me." But then she saw the look on Kael's face. The raw, possessive fire in his eyes as he looked from the rogue to her. It wasn't the cold dismissal from the forest. This was something else. Something fiercely protective and terrifyingly absolute. Her instincts surged. This powerful, broken alpha, the man who had shattered her world, now looked at her as if she were the only thing holding it together. And she didn't know what scared her more. Malachor's plan, or the sudden, terrifying promise in Alpha Kael's eyes.
Chapter 16. The war horns blared. A deep, gut-wrenching sound. The beginning of the end. Malachor's army crashed against their defenses. Not a wave, a hammer. A sea of snarling fur and glowing eyes, moving with a terrifying, single-minded purpose. From his position on the main battlement, Kael shouted orders, his voice raw. His warriors fought with the desperate courage of a people defending their home. But the enemy was endless. Still, his eyes kept flickering back toward the stone keep at the center of their stronghold. Celine was in there. He had ordered her to stay with the healers, surrounded by his best guards. He told himself it was the most defensible position. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was hiding her, terrified for her. Because of that, a cold knot of dread tightened in his stomach. These attacks weren't random. They weren't trying to overwhelm the walls everywhere at once. Instead, they were focused. They were hitting one section of the wall, the section closest to the keep, over and over and over. They were using siege tactics. They were using intelligence. As if fate demanded it, he saw a group of Malachor's largest warriors carrying a massive sharpened log, a battering ram. They weren't just trying to break in. They were trying to carve a direct path. To make things worse, he realized, they weren't just after his pack. They didn't care about his territory. They were here for one reason, and one reason only. Her. With every heartbeat, the pounding on the wall grew louder, a drumbeat counting down the final seconds of his failure. He had brought this war to their doorstep, to her doorstep, and he didn't know if any of them would survive it.
Chapter 17. Celine refused to hide. She couldn't. While the battle raged outside, she worked alongside her uncle, Elias, in the makeshift infirmary inside the keep. She ripped bandages, cleaned wounds, and offered what little comfort she could. But she felt like the eye of a hurricane, a calm center while the world ripped itself apart around her. Her wolf paced restlessly under her skin. It wanted to fight. Then, the world shook. A deafening crack echoed through the keep, followed by the splintering of stone and wood. A section of the outer wall, the wall closest to them, had been breached. Screams and snarls erupted from the courtyard below. The battle was no longer outside. It was here. Before she could move, warriors poured into the courtyard. Chaos. Blackwater and Silver Moon wolves met the attackers in a desperate, bloody clash. But then, one figure strode through the breach, and all other fighting seemed to fade away. He was a wolf of impossible size, black as a starless night with intelligent, malevolent eyes that burned like embers. He moved with an ancient power that made the very air around him feel thin and cold. Malachor. He completely ignored the warriors battling around him. His burning gaze swept the area until it landed on her, and stopped. As if pulled by a string, he began to walk toward her, a direct, unhurried path through the carnage. "Celine, get back!" Elias roared, stepping in front of her, his own wolf rising to the surface. He was a great warrior, strong, brave, but he was no match for this. Without breaking his stride, Malachor swatted Elias aside with one massive paw. Her uncle flew through again and crashed against the stone wall with a sickening crunch. He didn't get up. Malachor kept walking, coming for her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. There was nowhere left to run. Chapter 18. From the chaos of the battlements, he saw it. The wall breached, the enemy pouring in. Again. Malachor. He saw the monstrous wolf stride through the battle as if it were a minor inconvenience. He watched in horror as Elias, brave, foolish Elias, was cast aside like a broken toy, and he saw Malachor corner Celine. Time stood still. The roar of the battle faded to a distant hum. His heart stopped. He was too far away. His warriors were locked in their own desperate fights. No one could get to her in time. Everything he had done, his arrogant rejection, his agonizing regret, his recent fierce vow to protect her, it was all meaningless. It had all led to this. A moment where he was forced to watch, helpless, as the only thing that mattered in his shattered world was about to be extinguished. His fault. All of it. The weight of that truth was absolute. It was a physical force, crushing the air from his lungs. In the quiet that followed, a single desolate thought echoed in his soul. I failed.
She stood her ground. Her fear was a living thing, cold and sharp in her throat, but she would not let this monster see it. As the forest held its breath, Malachor flowed from his wolf form into that of a man. He was tall and ancient, with cruel lines carved around a mouth that had never known kindness. His eyes, the same burning embers from his wolf form, held 1,000 years of hatred. He smiled, a chilling, predatory expression. "The last of the ash moon," he hissed, his voice like the slithering of a snake over dry leaves. So much trouble to find you." He raised a wicked curved blade. Its edge pulsed with a sickly green light, a magical poison that seemed to drink the very air around it. She felt its corruption, its wrongness in her very bones. "Your unique power will complete my work," he whispered, his smile widening. "Your blood will be the ink that writes the end of this world." She braced herself, her heart a trapped bird beating against the cage of her ribs. She saw the blade begin its final downward arc, and just like that, everything went dark. Chapter 19. Time stopped. The universe narrowed to a single horrifying image, the green, glowing blade falling toward Celine. Despair, thick and suffocating, choked him. I failed. The thought was a cold, sharp stone in his gut. He had tried to be a great alpha, a strategic leader. He had weighed his options, made his calculations, and chosen what he thought was duty. What a fool he had been. All his plans, all his sacrifices, they had all led to this, to him watching, helpless, as his world was about to be extinguished. His fault. All of it. But then, in the absolute stillness of his soul's lowest point, something inside him shifted. The crushing weight of his failure. It vanished. The roar of the battle faded away. The ghosts of his father, of his pack, of his pride, they all disappeared. All that was left was her face. Her fierce, beautiful, terrified face. And just like that, everything became simple. So terribly simple. It wasn't about saving his pack anymore. It wasn't about breaking the curse or fixing his mistake. It was about her, only her. This wasn't a choice between duty and love. Truth be told, there was no choice at all. There was only her, his mate, the other half of his soul. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just love, raw and powerful. The calculating alpha on his frozen throne was dead. What rose from those ashes was something much older, something much more primal, the male who would burn the world to the ground to protect his mate. His despair didn't turn to hope. It turned into fuel, into a singular, white-hot purpose that consumed every other thought. He couldn't undo the past, but he could change the present. He could give her a future. Before the thought even finished, his body moved on instinct. Chapter 20. He ran. The world was a blur of violence, of chaos, but he saw none of it. His entire being was focused on one point in the distance, a silver-haired she-wolf and the dark monster looming over her. He was no longer an alpha directing a battle. He was a weapon, a black thunderbolt streaking across the blood-soaked mud. He shoved his own warriors aside. He ripped through Malakor's forces without even seeing their faces. They were just obstacles, gray shapes in his path. A low growl rose in his throat, a sound of pure, possessive fury that came from the very core of his wolf. Mine. The word was not a thought, it was a promise, a declaration of war against fate itself. He had rejected her with words. Now, he would claim her with his life. The ground flew beneath his feet, his lungs burned, his muscles screamed, yet he felt no pain. There was only the driving, desperate need to get to her, to put his body between hers and the blade. He could see her more clearly now, the terror in her eyes, the defiant tilt of her chin. She was not cowering. She was facing death like the warrior she was, and the sight of her courage only fueled his desperate sprint. He leaped over the body of a fallen warrior, his eyes never leaving her. The distance was closing. 10 feet, 5 feet. He could see the cruel smile on Malakor's face. He could see the sickly green light of the cursed blade as it sliced through the air. He knew he wouldn't be able to stop the blow. He was too late for that. But he wasn't too late to change its target. With every last ounce of his strength, with every shred of his soul, he launched himself into again. A final desperate leap. Chapter 21. In the span of a breath, the world slowed to a crawl. He saw everything. The wicked curve of the cursed blade, the triumphant, hateful sneer on Malakor's face, the single defiant tear that escaped Celine's eye and traced a path through the dirt on her cheek. He felt a strange sense of peace. The war inside him. It was finally over. His wolf and his mind. Finally won. United in this last desperate act, he had no regrets. Not anymore. There was only this. This one, true thing. His body slammed into Malakor's an instant before the blade could complete its journey. But Malakor was ancient and strong. Kael wasn't able to stop the arm's momentum completely. He could only alter its path. So, with a final guttural roar, he twisted his body, deliberately putting his own chest in the way of the descending point. He felt a flash of searing, white-hot agony. Cold and fire at the same time. The cursed blade sank deep into his chest, and the world went silent.
She had braced for the end. She had closed her eyes, her last thought a silent apology to her uncle. But the killing blow never came. Instead, a roar of pure fury ripped through everywhere. A heavy body slammed into hers, shielding her, pushing her back. A splash of something warm and wet hit her face. Her eyes snapped open, and her world shattered for the second time. Kael stood over her. He was a shield, a wall between her and Malakor, and the cursed green blade was buried to the hilt in his chest. His eyes, those dark, tormented eyes, found hers. The cold alpha was gone. In his place was the man from her dreams, the other half of her soul, and in his gaze she saw no regret, only a fierce, desperate, all-consuming love. His name was a broken whisper on her lips. Kael.
Chapter 22. His name was a broken whisper on her lips. Kael. He collapsed. He fell to the ground before her, the cursed blade still jutting from his chest. The stillness that followed was more terrifying than any roar of battle. Her heart, which had been hammering against her ribs, seemed to stop entirely. A beat later, a scream tore from her throat, raw and guttural and full of a pain so vast it felt like it could split the world in two. It was the sound of her soul being ripped apart. As her tears fell, his blood spilled onto the earth beside her. The moment they mixed, something cracked, not in the world, but inside her. The moonstone around her neck, the one he had given her in that fleeting moment of hope, became blindingly hot. Between one breath and the next, it shattered. What followed was not a scream, but a storm. Pure, untamed power erupted from her, a blinding wave of silver light. It was the rage of the mountain, the fury of the wind, the deep, raw magic of the earth itself, answering the call of her grief and his sacrifice. Her wolf, once broken, now rose with a roar, not of pain, but of absolute power. She felt the land itself respond to her anguish. The very ground trembled. Winds howled, tearing at Malachor, who looked up from his triumph with a sudden, shocked expression of pure terror. He tried to raise his cursed blade again, but it was too late. The silver light, a cleansing fire born of love and loss, slammed into him. He didn't even have time to scream. He just dissolved, turned to dust and ash on the wind. But the storm didn't stop there. The wave of silver light rolled out from her across the battlefield, over the wounded and the dying. And as it touched the land, the sickly green tint of the plague, the curse that had haunted them for years, simply vanished, washed away. The atmosphere thickened, then the power receded, leaving her kneeling in the sudden, deafening silence, her hands hovering over Kael's still form.
Chapter 23. Weeks later, the world felt new. The plague was gone. Everywhere was clean. Laughter, real and joyful, could be heard in the packs again. A grand council had been formed, a new alliance of Blackwater, Sunstone, and Silvermoon, built on a foundation of shared sacrifice. Celine sat at the council table, not as an outsider, but as an honored hero, the savior of their people. Yet, her victory felt hollow. Because every time she looked at the empty seat beside his brother, her chest ached. Kael had survived. Barely. The healers said the curse in the blade had almost destroyed him, but Selena's magic had somehow held it at bay long enough for them to save him. He had been recovering in silence, speaking to no one. Until today. The doors to the council hall opened. Kael walked in. He was pale and thinner, but he walked with a straight back. The room fell silent. All eyes were on him, but his eyes were only on her. Without a word to anyone else, he walked across the stone floor and stopped directly in front of her. The space between them burned. With every heartbeat, the silence grew heavier. He did something that shocked every alpha in the room. He got to his knees. He bowed his head, his forehead touching the cold ground before her feet. An act of complete and total submission. An act no alpha had ever made. His voice, when he finally spoke, was clear, strong, and broken. I, Kael, of the Blackwater Pack, do not deserve the title of alpha, he declared to the silent room, and I do not deserve the title of mate. He raised his head, his tormented eyes locking with hers. I relinquish both, until the day I have earned her forgiveness. If that day ever comes. Her breath caught. Her world tilted for the third time. This was his penance, his epic grovel. And it was just the beginning.
Chapter 24. Months passed. Spring turned to a warm, vibrant summer. True to his word, Kael was no longer alpha of the Blackwater pack. His brother, Lucian, now led them, with Lyra at his side. And Kael? Kael worked. She watched him from a distance. He had gone to the lands that once belonged to her people, the Ashmoon pack, and with his own 2 hands he began to rebuild. He cleared rubble, replanted sacred trees, and reconstructed the old stone dwellings. He never approached her, he never spoke to her, but every morning, a fresh kill, the finest from his hunt, would be left at the edge of her territory. It was a silent, daily offering, a constant, quiet plea for a forgiveness he never asked for out loud. His arrogance was gone, washed away by his sacrifice and his shame. In its place was a quiet, humble strength that she found, to her surprise, she couldn't resist. She had healed. She had found her own identity not as an outsider but as a powerful woman, a leader in her own right. She was whole. And she saw him now, not as the man who broke her, but as the man who had humbled himself completely to prove he was worthy. He was finally the man he was always meant to be. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, she made her choice. He was finishing a low stone wall, his hands calloused and his muscles aching with the good, honest burn of labor. He felt her presence before he saw or smelled her. A shift around him. A sudden warmth. His heart hammered against his ribs. He turned slowly, his breath catching in his throat, ready for her judgment.
She walked right up to him. Everything between them crackled with a power that had nothing to do with curses or prophecies. "You have bled for me," she said softly, her voice no longer trembling. "You have humbled yourself for me." She reached out and gently touched his face. "Now, rise with me." As he stood, she looked into his hopeful, terrified eyes. She saw her mate, her equal, her own. Her wolf surged forward, strong and sure, and instead of waiting for his mark, she leaned in. With a fierce, possessive love, she bit his neck, marking him, claiming him as her own. Their love story would become a legend, the alpha whose true strength was found not in his power to reject, but in his courage to redeem, and the Luna, who had the strength to claim him back. Epilogue. 2 years later. The wind that whispered through the valley no longer carried the scent of sorrow. Instead, it smelled of fresh-cut lumber, wild moonflowers, and the rich, dark earth of a land reborn. The Ashmoon territory was no longer a ghost. It was a thriving village, its homes a mix of old stone and new wood, seamlessly blended with the strength of the Blackwater pack. It was a symbol of their new, unified world. From the porch of their home, Celine watched their daughter play in a patch of sunlight. She had Celine's silver hair and Kael's fiercely determined eyes. Her laughter was a bright, beautiful sound, the most precious sound in the world. It was the sound of a broken curse, the sound of their future. A pair of strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into Kael's familiar warmth. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his gaze fixed on their child. The haunted, broken alpha was long gone. In his place was a man at peace, an alpha whose strength came not from his power to command, but from his capacity to love. "I still can't believe it sometimes," he murmured, his voice a low, happy rumble against her ear. "Believe what?" she whispered, turning her head to kiss his cheek. "This," he answered, his voice thick with an emotion he no longer tried to hide. "That I get this. You. Her. After everything I did. After almost destroying it all." Celine reached up and gently touched the faint, silvery scar on his neck. The mating mark, the one she had given him. "We earned this, Kael," she said softly but fiercely. "We fought for it. We bled for it. Together." He turned her in his arms, his dark eyes full of a love so profound it still made her breath catch. He gently took her hand, his thumb stroking the smooth silver ring on her finger, a ring forged from the largest remaining piece of the shattered moonstone. a symbol that even the most broken things could be made new again, stronger. Their daughter squealed with delight, chasing a butterfly. He leaned in and kissed her, a slow, deep kiss full of promises kept and a future yet to be written. And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, they were more than just an alpha and his Luna. They were a legend. The alpha who learned that true strength was found in humility, and the Luna whose love was powerful enough to rebuild a world from its ashes.
Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.